to come into what is already a top 3 super prime market in planet Earth. And with those restrictions out the way and traffic in terms of travel to the UK and London going up, 2022 has the potential to be a really strong year moving forward. Welcome back to another edition of Super Prime UK with your Super Prime valuation specialist, me, Rob Cohen.
And myself, James Wild.
Welcome back, James. All good?
Yeah, really good, thanks, Rob. How are you?
Really, really good. Another super
Excellent.
busy week. The year is really kicking in, 2022. We are hoping it's going to be a great one for everyone as I keep pushing positivity after everything we've been through. And we are seeing that as we're being super busy, lots of activity in the marketplace, and our data and intel is telling us that, and that's why we're going to go straight into the numbers. And James will tell us what's been happening in the last week.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So, as you were saying last week, the property market, it's we had a slightly slower start in terms of the new instructions for this year, but we're sort of back up to just over 300 weekly new instructions for this week, which is just below the average for last year. And I think, like we say, Rob, it's an indication. We ourselves we're very busy at the moment, out for a number of valuations, instructions for purchases and refinance.
Yeah, I feel there is now a bit of a feel-good factor in the sense that people are starting to believe that we're moving into more normal territories, getting out more, living life, getting back to more normal business practices. Me, for example, the diary is filling up with face-to-face meetings with the lenders and the banks and the funds and the institutions. My travel plans are starting to fill up as we move into February and March, hitting all of the banks across Europe and the funds and the institutions that we work with. And the numbers and the data and the activity of volume of work that we're doing is clearly demonstrating that the year is in full flow, and I think we can be positive about it.
Definitely, like you say, Rob, in terms of the weekly sales this week, 145, which again is in line with last year. So again, there's some positivity that not only are new properties coming on the market, but they're also transacting.
Absolutely, and normally there is a lag going into January from Christmas and New Year. And I think this year we can tell by these numbers that lag's been shortened, and already we're in full flow.
Definitely. And Rob, I know you've been out for a number of inspections across London and across some of the super prime districts which we cover. I mean, what's the most impressive super prime house you've seen in the last week or so?
I think in terms of the amount of properties I've been seeing, especially the housing stock, it always throws me how there is so much high-end spec housing stock that we're either seeing or has come to the market or is being traded, and getting one of those, maybe not prize or trophy assets, but something in a super prime location that has been finished to a very high spec is, I suppose, part of the fascination and joy that we have the opportunity to do within our day-to-day jobs, and the levels and the benchmarks, individuality and specification and finish is going up and up. And some of the stock that I've seen recently across Holland Park and St John's Wood, I've seen some really, really good housing stock that has gone through a lot of work, full refurbs, some extensions, and so on. And I think that's a real interesting point of where the market is and reaching new levels of quality and finish.
Yeah, and like we said, in terms of those turnkey properties, there's buyers out there, due to the rising build cost uncertainty, procuring those contractors, I think buyers are, there's that added sort of pressure, if you like. They're looking for turnkey houses, like some of these sort of prized trophy assets which you've been seeing recently.
I think that's a good point, James, because people are willing to pay a premium that comes with getting that turnkey, high-end trophy, super prime asset, and building in the time factor and the challenge with bringing on contractors and supplies. I think that has further fueled the demand for such an asset, and there is a reasonable amount of interest within the market for that space, and I feel that's what we're currently seeing, and I think that's going to be an interesting space both in London and the surrounding areas, also across the world as we see super prime assets go from strength to strength. And I think we discussed this in previous shows, but the wealth in the top 20 wealth leaders across the world has grown substantially throughout the last 2 years and the pandemic, and thus the wealth space is growing.
Yeah, and just in terms of the market here in London for super prime housing stock, can you talk to me about is there a differentiation from buyers that in terms of houses versus flats? Is it sort of different buyers, and are you seeing in terms of the resale market or in terms of the comparables, the amount of that super prime stock trading? Is there sort of an abundance of super prime flats out there with buyers typically looking for that more outside space and garden?
I definitely see that the trend we're seeing is that the housing stock, the lateral space, the outdoor space is in demand, and that's where Mr. and Mrs. Ultra High Net Worth is currently looking, and that's what we're seeing at the moment in terms of the valuations that are trading for acquisition or purchase, or even the refinances that are taking place. The demand space is the wider footprint, larger housing stock with outdoor space, compared to maybe previously the demand was for apartments, the security, concierge, facilities and so on. We may have seen a certain shift to a degree in what people are looking for following the change of trends that we've seen during the pandemic and post-pandemic, what the requirements are going to be moving forward in 2022.
That's it. So in terms of the best in terms of houses, it's those lateral houses, those low builds with large gardens, and in terms of those super prime flats, it's probably the penthouse flats with the large roof garden and possibly added views, whether it be river views or views of whether it be St Paul's Cathedral or the London skyline. Those are the super prime assets which buyers are really looking for.
I think it's also important to take into account that as the government have announced this week that all of the travel restrictions and requirements are pretty much being dropped, that would allow even more overseas purchasers to come into what is already a top 3 super prime market in planet Earth. And with those restrictions out the way and traffic in terms of travel to the UK and London going up, 2022 has the potential to be a really strong year moving forward.
That's a lot of super prime London agents might be postponing their half-term holidays.
Maybe.
We'll see. And then just wanted to talk about, in terms of government policy as well, in terms of the movement for the back to work returning, which I think is going to be slowly implemented by a number of companies in the capital, with sort of possibly a hybrid working of 2-3 days in the office, and possibly different roles within the company having a more of an onus for a sort of physical appearance at the office. So I think that was good news for the office market, and again on the back of last week's news of Google's acquisition of sort of their headquarters just down the road from us.
Absolutely. Again, that trend in February is going to go from strength to strength. People will be returning to offices, as you said, in a more hybrid manner, and I think that will enhance all trade in terms of hospitality and retail and food and beverage should strengthen as the weeks go by, and that's all going to be positive for the wider economy and the position in the UK. And I think it is important for us to really clarify that it looks like, hopefully, that the UK is the first out of the last wave, and on that basis, hopefully that will enhance a speedy recovery to our economy, and hopefully the UK will be a benchmark economy to look to, and that can only be good for this industry, this market, and everything related to the property, lending and employment and the wider economy.
Definitely, and just whilst we're speaking of the economy, obviously we had the news end of last week in terms of the consumer price index, or the inflationary measure, has risen 5.4% now. Inflation stands at in the 12 months leading to December 21, up from 5.1% from the November, which obviously triggered the interest rate rises to 0.25% there. So in terms of the inflationary pressures now, they are starting to build, and I think we could actually see another interest rate rise, another increment to 0.5% possibly in February. I don't know if you've got any views on that. So I'm not sure when the Monetary Policy Committee next meeting to make that decision.
I think it is possible, and hence the reason why we're seeing so much refinance activity at the moment. People are hedging a bit, wanting to close out on a good product. So I think it's possible, and it probably will happen this year. If it's at the next meeting, maybe, and if it's not at the next, it'll be one of the following ones.
That's it. We wonder what the threshold will be on the inflation. Hopefully it starts to top out and fall, but we'll keep you updated with that. I mean, it's the highest rate of inflation since March 1992, when inflation was 7.1%, just to put that in perspective. So we are some way below that, but it's the highest since that time.
Anything else this week?
That's it from me.
Amazing. Quick, punchy update with all the intel, data, what's happening on the ground in the property, lending, finance market, and we will be back next week. I just want to thank everyone. Great support, great coverage, great communication, great engagement. So grateful for it. Have a great week. Keep positive, stay well, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks very much, everyone.